Welcome to episode number 132 of the Marine Layer podcast. We welcome on Mike Ryan Ruiz of the Dan Le Batard Show and Meadowlark Media. We chat with him about adopting the Mariners as his new team, his journey as a new M's fan, and a little bit about media in general. We have our two Mariners storylines. Ryan Bliss makes his Major League debut here on Monday, and we'll try and figure out why George Kirby has been so inconsistent this season.
Here's your guys' reminder to download these episodes. If you're listening to the podcast, you're doing us a big favor if you do. Leave that 5-star review, leave a written review. That's all on the audio side. If you're watching this on YouTube, you see the subscribe button, just hit a like on it, or click the subscribe button, leave a like on this video, drop a comment below. Then check us out on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. 1-1 from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording Monday evening, May 27th. Lyle, I have to ask, how was it being 10 feet from future Mariner Kyle Tucker tonight?
Oh, how was it? I was invigorated. Like, I could just feel new life flowing through me. I'm just watching this dude roam around the outfield. I was like, he was made for this ballpark. It fits him. It fits him. Like, you can just feel the vibes going up and up with Kyle Tucker in the ballpark. I got to tell you.
Did you just feel like you're going to whisper to him? It's like, all right, Kyle, repeat after me. Seattle.
Yeah, it's like,
let's go Mariners.
See, it's
let's go Mariners.
Well, he heard the chance here on Monday. I got to tell you, though.
Well, what about you making him say it?
See, what's the old saying? If you say Beetlejuice 3 times, it'll happen. You just got to, Kyle Tucker needs to say Seattle Mariners 3 times. That's it.
And then, poof. I'm in teal now.
Well, we're less than 2 months away, people. Start gearing up. You can honestly customize a jersey right now if you wanted to.
And you know what would help Kyle Tucker becoming a Mariner? The Mariners win the next 3 games of this series.
What did I say in the game-winning tweet here on Monday night? With every passing Astros loss, Kyle Tucker gets pushed further and further out the door in Houston. It's only facts only, people. They're 6 under 500. We're at nearly June 1st. We, as everybody who knows who tunes into this pod, we speak facts only here. This is simply facts. Get on the train while it's still hot.
Right. Yeah, we are 100. We are the most factual people you could know. There's a reason Shohei Ohtani is here playing under a 1-year, $65 million contract. Facts only.
And it's because we handed out those index cards saying come to Seattle too.
Right. Yeah.
So
how many of those do you still have, by the way?
I still have a few.
Oh, okay. Nice memory.
We worked hard on those. I'm keeping them.
Yeah.
So I know he was injured that series, but it doesn't change the fact that not only do we work to make him, pass him around the ballpark, man, we put effort into that, Shohei. I hope one day we get to meet and I can just hand you one of those cards.
It's like, think of what could have been, man. Think of what could have been as he's collecting his deferred $68 million paycheck.
Right. Exactly.
Well, we can get there when we get there. Let's get to our Mariners storylines, and let's start here on Monday because a surprise earlier today, Ryan Bliss gets the call up, and he's now on the roster replacing Jorge Polanco, who goes to the 10-day injured list with hamstring tightness. Are we surprised that it's Ryan Bliss taking this roster spot?
I'm not that surprised. I think there were some people that thought it was going to be Urias that just came back up, but I honestly didn't think it was a slam dunk to be Urias. I thought there was a chance, but Bliss has been hitting. He's got about 110 games under his belt now in AAA for his career. He'd started to really hit, especially over the last month. Justin Hollander talked about it on Monday, how his approach has gotten better. He's walked more, strikeouts have come down, and you've seen some power. So would my first guess have been they just bring Urias back? Sure. Am I shocked Bliss got the call-up? Not really. And I'm excited for him, too.
I think at first my thought was Urias, but the more I look into this, the more it actually makes sense about Ryan Bliss. So let's just paint the picture of his last month. He's reached base over 40% of the time in AAA the last month. He's got a .412 on base, slugging nearly 500 with a 127 WRC plus in AAA. Good, not unbelievable, but still pretty darn good for Ryan Bliss in AAA as just a 24-year-old. So, okay, that's good. Walking and striking out equal amounts over that stretch, 16.7% of the time, both for walks and for strikeouts. So that, that's just the bat profile. And then I'm sitting here thinking as well. So Justin Hollander was also very complimentary of Ryan Bliss's defense. Okay, good. Urias has been playing good defense this season, but you have Demo, you have Rojas, and you have Ryan Bliss now in the infield. And if you think all the three of them can play solid defense combined between third and second, okay, that works out. And then you have the base running factor too. Ryan Bliss in AAA so far has stolen 28 of 34 bags this year. 28 of 34. And if we combine that with Luis Urias, he has been a subpar base runner, 18th percentile in sprint speed this year. Doesn't qualify when it comes to base running run value, but if he did qualify, it wouldn't be very good. It kind of makes more sense once you run down the list of things that are important. He makes the team more athletic. I think they feel at this point offers them a little bit more with the bat. Urias must really need those at-bats in AAA. He was not hitting well up here at the big league level, especially with that inconsistent playing time. And they might just think that he doesn't just need at-bats, he needs AAA at-bats. He needs to refine his approach. He needs to find some more consistency at the plate. And I would say eventually, yeah, he'll probably be back on this big league roster because they traded for him to be a big leaguer, and he's making big league money. But for now, let's see what Ryan Bliss has.
Yeah, I think they're going to let Urias get some real at-bats in AAA and then evaluate moving forward. But in terms of Bliss, for everything you outlined, it does make a lot of sense. And also, put it in this perspective too. Jorge Polanco is going to be out for what they feel like is a pretty short amount of time. Hollander said he wasn't going to put an exact timeline on it, but he said whether it's the minimum 10 days, whether it's 2 weeks, they're going to get an official MRI on Tuesday and then evaluate. But the point being, they're not overly concerned about Polanco's injury. They don't think it's a long-term thing. They just want to make sure they now get this right and make sure the hamstring is healthy rather than just taking it day by day and putting Polanco as day-to-day, trying to just work through it with every passing day with him on the active roster. So with that, this could give them a pretty good idea of where Ryan Bliss is at. If for the next 2 weeks he's up here and he looks totally overmatched, he doesn't look like he's putting together competitive big league at-bats, then he's 24 years old. You send him back to AAA, he gets a little bit more developmental time under his belt. That's fine. But again, after 110 games, I think it makes sense to want to see where he's at and give him a shot at the big league level. Now, on the flip side of that, if in the next 2 weeks, Ryan Bliss shows that he's ready for the big leagues and he's really providing a spark in the offense and he's putting up quality at bats and he's playing good defense and he's stealing some bases, then maybe he just sticks. Maybe he's here a while. Maybe this is the call-up that keeps him around long term. But point being, with Polanco out for the next 2 weeks, I think they'll have a pretty decent idea in that amount of time, assuming Bliss isn't just playing once a week, where he's at as a big leaguer. If they get enough at-bats under his belt in the next 2 weeks, I think they'll have a pretty good idea for what to measure him off of.
As of recording here on Monday, I liked his at-bats tonight. Did not look overmatched against a very good starter in Framber Valdez tonight. I thought he put the bat head on the ball very nicely there at second base. So, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense of what they're doing with this. And I would say there's only really upside to go from here for the Mariners because they feel like Urias needs time in AAA, and that replacement means Ryan Bliss is getting time. I was kind of skeptical, I'm going to be honest, at first, because if you look at AAA, him and Jonathan Clase's numbers are very similar in AAA. Clase, if you look at him at the plate right now, a little overmatched. Little not really adding much offensively for the Mariners, batting down there in the 9 hole like he was tonight. But Clase's gotten more of those at-bats in the big leagues, and we've come to realize that. Haven't seen that with Ryan Bliss yet. I'm excited for him. I mean, this dude's mashed in the minors, mashed in Double-A when the Mariners acquired him last year, taking a little bit of time to get his footing in Triple-A. If you just look at the broad stroke of the year, you might not think he's ready, and that's fine, because I know he got off to a slow start this year before picking it up in May. But we'll have to see. He doesn't need to be great for the rest of the year. He just needs to be great until Jorge Polanco's healthy, at the minimum. That's it. He needs to have a good 2 weeks. Polanco comes back, and then Jorge Polanco picks it up and starts hitting again, while Ryan Bliss probably finishes off whatever he needs to down in Tacoma before they ultimately want him to stick on the big league roster for the rest of his time.
Or if he's just that good in these 2 weeks, he'll stick around. If he's providing that much value to the team, they'll make room for him. What that looks like, we'll know in 2 weeks. But he's got a real chance here to make his mark. How would
you shuffle that?
I think we'll have a better idea 2 weeks from now. Because, again, we have to see what Bliss is playing like. If he's really lighting it up, I think we'll have to think of some options. But
let's say, just off the top of my head, unless you are like the left side / up the middle infielders right now, you have Demo, you have JP, you have Rojas, and you have Bliss.
Well, here you go. If Bliss is really hitting for the next 2 weeks and Polanco comes back, you send Clase back down. Demo plays more outfield than infield. Bliss stays in the infield.
Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. So Bliss has a chance to make his mark and stay. And also, if you want to get away from the numbers for a second, I'm not sure there is a more awesome dude in this organization than Ryan Bliss. And that's saying a lot, because there's so many awesome guys on this team, and we could rattle off so many of them, and so many of them that we've talked to. But this guy has to be one of, I don't even mean just baseball players, just genuine people you will talk to. It's really, really cool. So I'm rooting my tail off for Ryan Bliss to make this thing happen and stick in the big leagues, because he's so easy to root for, and he's such an awesome dude.
Yeah, really nice guy running into him down at spring training too. I will say on your roster thought, I would rather him be playing if he's up here at the big league level, because as with a lot of these guys, doesn't do them a whole lot of good to sit on the bench. So we'll see. When 2 weeks comes around, that'll be a better measure of that. But when Jorge Polanco comes back, he'll be back on the big league roster. That's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So what else shuffles around by then? We're just going to have to wait and see.
Right. Yeah, we'll see. But again, really excited for Ryan Bliss. Really easy guy to root for. I'm sure in the next couple weeks, as you guys get to see more of him, you'll understand and get to see him kind of more in the media a bit. And just, I mean, you've probably seen him a bit, but yeah, he's just awesome. I hope his personality gets to shine here in the next few weeks, because it's a very, very easy personality to become a fan of. So,
look, think of the type of person he is. So we ask him when we're down there at spring training. If you follow our Instagram account, you've probably seen it. But I asked him, an Auburn Tiger, what he thinks overrated or underrated Alabama football. And this man still says, out of the nicest of his heart, that he has the utmost respect for the University of Alabama football team. And, you know, that clip got a few handfuls of thousands of views on his part, and like an Auburn Tiger saying that, what? But it's like, that's just who Ryan Bliss is, as like a short and small example. But despite how nice he is, he can come around to realize that Babe Ruth might not be all that he was hyped up to be.
That's true. He did say that. It was funny when you asked him the Bama football question, you gave him the question and he goes, ha. He's like, oh, I'm going to have to give an answer to this. So he's very genuine. He's a very, very easy personality to be a fan of. So I hope you guys get to see a bunch of that in the next couple weeks, because he's awesome. Genuinely, he is awesome. All right, let's take a quick pause to talk to you guys about our friends over at Pagacci's Pub 85. That's over in Kirkland. It's an awesome spot, as we continue to tell you guys to go hang out with your friends, watch some sports, eat some great food, whatever you want to do. You don't need to look any further for a place to go hang out than there. If you go during happy hour, they got some great drink specials. It's from 2 to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Drinks start as low as $3, and they're almost always around $3 to $4 period. That's a 4-hour happy hour with drinks that are $3 or $4. It's an awesome deal and an awesome spot to hang out with your friends. So that's over at Pagacci's Pub 85 in Kirkland. So shout out to Ryan Bliss. Keep it going. We're rooting for him. As we transition to the second storyline here, let's talk a little bit about George Kirby. We haven't talked about him specifically in a segment much this year, but I think it's about time we do a little bit of an evaluation on him because he's been up and down through the first 2 months. He's had his good starts. He's had his starts where he's gotten knocked around a bit. His ERA sits a little bit over 4 right now. What do we think the issue is here? And maybe issue is not the right way to put it, but what hasn't been as crisp for George Kirby so far?
The simplistic approach is he's given up too many home runs. That's it. He has given up 7 home runs in his last 4 starts. It's hard to win doing that. Not all of them have been solo homers either. So if we're talking about the most basic reason why George Kirby in 3 of his last 4 starts were not good, it's because he's given up too many long balls. You cannot win games giving up multiple home runs in a start. It is really, really difficult for George to do that. Do you want to get on a more specific level? We have not seen the step forward with George Kirby's off-speed stuff and breaking stuff as we would have expected to see this season. Now that we have 2 months worth of George Kirby starts this season, we can make a semi-decent evaluation on how his stuff has been so far. We think we have a large enough sample to evaluate his pitches, the pitch shapes, and the pitch results. And frankly, his breaking balls have sucked this year. They've sucked. I wish I could use a softer term, but no, they have like legitimately have not been good at all. He has 2nd percentile breaking ball run value on Baseball Savant, and on off speed run value, 4th percentile. And again, this is supposed to be a dude who's among the top 10 starters in baseball at his peak. So to see those numbers are flabbergasting.
His slider's getting destroyed. If you want to zone in on one pitch, his slider was a really good pitch for him last year, and it worked. He threw it a decent amount, kept guys off balance with it. It's getting hit really hard this year. And if you want to get into the specifics, last year, last year, 2023, guys slugged 377 against it. He had a 6 run value. Really good pitch. Right now, guys are slugging 667 against his slider. That's high. It's legitimately getting destroyed right now. So if you want to look at one specific, and there's a few reasons, but if you want to zone in on an area of improvement for George Kirby, he's got to get that slider back because it's just, it doesn't have the same effect right now as it did last year.
Split too. His split's not getting slugged as much, but they have the same run value. And that's the pitch as we look at the other 2 splitters in this rotation. Devastating difference-making pitches for both Logan Gilbert and Bryce Miller. It's been the exact opposite for George Kirby. It has not been a valuable pitch for him at all. He can't use it. It doesn't have the effectiveness as those other pitches are. And his curveball's not been good either. So he legitimately, if you look at his sinker and his 4-seam fastball, both have been excellent pitches this year by run value. His other 3 pitches have been subpar. He has no out pitch to get himself out of situations. And when you go too fastball heavy, again, at times, you're going to get popped because either someone's going to hit one of your off-speed pitches that hasn't been very effective this season, hasn't generated that much swing and miss, or you're going to leave a fastball in the middle of the plate, and eventually big league hitters are going to put the barrel on it, hit it in the air, and put it over the fence. That's what happens, and we've seen that here this month. Like, the only way George this season has gotten out of situations like this with some of his off-speed pitches is when he's had like a legit 80 grade fastball. Like when he pitched against the Diamondbacks this year, that was near 80 grade fastball where he's just pumping gas past guys. But if he can't do that, as we've seen in 3 of his last 4 starts, he's struggling.
Right. And part of it is he doesn't have the swing and miss stuff that Luis and Logan have. That's just not who he is as a pitcher, at least not yet. He pins, as we know, pinpoint command, pounds the zone, dots up the corners, but he doesn't quite get the chase rate that guys like Logan and Luis get. He doesn't get the swing and miss that those guys get. So what George has to do to be at his best is pound the zone and get weak contact. But right now he's getting hit pretty hard.
So so like the filling up the zone and weak contact part, yes. But then like when he's not getting that swing, it just like it's the worst. It's a bad combination two hittable pitches in the strike zone that don't get swung and missed at. So that leads you open to more susceptible for more things. And the whiff's not even really average; it's below average for most of his off-speed pitches. He doesn't have his best strikeout pitch is his four-seam fastball this year. But outside of that, if you break, like, his split only has a 19% strikeout rate. His splitter, that's supposed to be a strikeout pitch, 19%. You want to compare that to Bryce, right? So the numbers on George Kirby's splitter, he gets a whiff at 26% of the time. He gets strikeouts at a 19% clip. Bryce gets whiffs at a 28% clip, but strikeouts at a 38% clip. Like, see the like Grand Canyon size gap in getting an out between those two pitches. It is hard when your out pitches don't actually get you out of anything. So that's number one, right? So let's say his splitter is a big reason for this, because his splitter was supposed to help him. Like, we knew his slider was effective, but it wasn't like perhaps not a game-changing slider. Is that fair?
Yeah, it was a good pitch. It wasn't
not a game changer, though.
Sure, it wasn't Spencer Strider's slider, if that's what you mean.
Right, exactly. The other thing, so the splitter was supposed to be the pitch that the slider was not. The splitter was supposed to take a jump that we've seen from Logan and that we've seen from Bryce, and it has not. But another thing that really shocked me about George, he's really good around the edges of the strike zone. They call that the shadow zone. The shadow zone is one ball inside the strike zone and one ball outside of the strike zone. If you make that a box, it's more of like just the line around the edge of the strike zone. That's the shadow zone. George Kirby in his first two seasons, excellent in the shadow zone. And by excellent, you can, if you look hard enough, you can find the numbers on Baseball Savant. They're really good. If you put a pitch on the shadow zone, it's really hard for hitters to do anything with that pitch. Well, his numbers are almost twice as bad this year on the shadow part of the zone. So the pitches he puts on the pinpoint edges of the strike zone that are supposed to be ultra effective are not as effective this year. And I mean drastically not as effective. And it's hard for a pitcher if you are making your pitch and the batters are doing something with that pitch anyways. So you could chalk that up to bad luck. You could chalk it up to execution. Regardless, when George Kirby throws the pitches where he wants, he's not getting the results he wants. And that's probably because of his off-speed pitches, because hitters can sit on the pitches they know they can hit more than the other ones.
Right. I mean, his barrel rate is 30% down from where it was a year ago. That's a lot. You talk about him getting hit harder. That's a pretty big drop-off, paired with that he already doesn't really get the whiffs. So, look, ultimately, when you look at his expected numbers, xERA, his FIP, his xFIP, it's all much lower than where his ERA is. So despite all of this, there are numbers that are saying George has gotten unlucky. There is reason to expect he's going to progress back to where the mean is. But he isn't quite looking like the guy that we've often tabbed has the highest upside of anybody in the rotation. He still had his starts where he's been good. It just hasn't looked like a Cy Young winner, right?
No, he's not looked like a Cy Young winner. And I thought we thought in year 3 he would look like that. And there's still a lot of time left in the season. You still have 4 months left. George could rip off a 1 ERA over his next 20 starts. No one will remember this at all. But as we look right now, we're thinking of like year-to-year progression. Just haven't seen a whole lot. Not in the stuff department. There are other areas. But in the actual stuff and what you and I have talked about, like what the next step for George Kirby is having a strikeout pitch when he needs it. He still doesn't. His strikeout pitch is his fastball. We were thinking something besides the fastball. One pitch besides the fastball that you can go to get a swing and a miss. And we still don't see it.
Right. We can't do much more about this than speculate because we don't have the medical information, obviously. But you do wonder if part of it is the knee thing that keeps getting brought up.
Yeah, could be. That would make sense.
Right. We don't know. We can't do anything more than speculate, but you just wonder.
Yeah. So it could be the knee. Yeah. So we'll have to see. It's in such a drastic change in the month of May after having a pretty pretty darn good April.
Mm-hmm.
Time will have to tell for George Kirby, but as we know, if he was actually hurt, he would probably not be pitching. Like actually hurt to break down, that wouldn't happen. And the funny thing about all this is, right in between all of these bad starts, he had a really awesome start that you and I were there to see against the Royals, where he was dominant as ever against a very good Royals team, by the way. So I don't know. Sometimes baseball's random, and sometimes it could just be, we sit here and speculate all this time, and it could just be the fact he gave up 7 home runs when he shouldn't have given up 7. What if he only gave up 4 home runs instead of 7, and he would instead have won all 4 of his starts? Because you take 3 home runs away, and the game looks a whole lot different.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Hopefully he turns it around, because the Mariners need him. They need him very, very much.
Yeah. You know, I liked so we had Mike Ryan Ruiz on, who you'll hear from here in a little bit. It's a different kind of interview, right? Because we usually strive to interview the experts, people who know something beyond us, that we want to dive into their interesting story, and we want to hear their perspective on this Mariners team. Well, Mike Ryan, Lyle, has he's a brand new Mariner fan. A very notable figure in the sports community. He's the longtime executive producer of the Dan Le Batard Show, formerly on ESPN, now of Meadowlark Media. And they're on this own adventure with Meadowlark Media they're a media startup. They're trying to work their way in this new world. And Mike Ryan acknowledges, baseball's not a big part of what they do, but it's a big part of who he is. And he wanted a new baseball team. And Mina Kimes helped and floated out, hey, you should root for the Mariners. And Mike Ryan thought about it and was like, yeah, let's root for the Mariners. So now he is part of the Mariners community. And we thought, what better way to welcome him on than to have him on the podcast?
It was great. This was one of my favorite conversations we've done, to be honest with you. And it's very free flowing. Just feels like 3 people talking. And for anybody out there that might I'm guessing if you listen to this podcast, you're probably a big Mariner fan, but if you have friends out there that aren't and need a reason to get into baseball and the Mariners, have them listen to this interview with Mike Ryan Ruiz, because he's new to the Mariners just like everybody else is, and he's learning as he goes about what makes the team fun, what makes the team unique, what parts are frustrating as we go along here. But super fun conversation. Like, again, just very much 3 people going back and forth, spitballing ideas. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. I mean it when I say this is one of my favorite ones we've done.
And if you're not sold on this team already, well, I think Mike Ryan will help sell you on it, because he's having a lot of fun watching this baseball team. Let's get to our conversation with Mike Ryan Ruiz. We welcome on Mike Ryan Ruiz. You know him from the Dan Le Batard Show. He's the executive producer at Meadowlark Media and the newest notable Mariner fan. Mike Ryan, welcome in. And just got to start it off. How is life as a newly minted Mariner fan?
Life is good right now. I think I picked a good year to just jump aboard the bandwagon. Treading up, everybody. Treading up.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a South Florida sports fan, and that I support the Miami Heat, I support Inter Miami, and I support the Florida Panthers. When baseball season started, all of them were kind of playing varying degrees of important games. Right now, the Panthers, I love my Ice Cats. A day one fan of theirs, but it's exciting to know that this baseball team that it started as a bit, but now I've legitimately attached some affinity to. They're starting to play well, and the last time baseball made me feel really anything was the early 2000s. Back when I was a Marlins fan, we can talk a little bit about that, but that franchise betrayed me one too many times. And then I just found it easy to cut off the sport as analytics got more and more involved and made the game less aesthetically pleasing, as the franchise just did more and more locally to push me away from the sport. I realized maybe baseball's not for me anymore. But baseball, to its credit, fixed a lot of the things that I took issue with. I wanted to give it a real chance. And I realized I tried that last year, but I didn't have a rooting interest. I don't feel anything for the Marlins laundry. I don't feel anything for that building. I hate that it's there because I'm a huge Miami Hurricanes guy, and it just represents what used to be there. So I realized I needed a rooting interest. So I hopped on a random team generator And I talked to some friends beforehand about, hey, I'm thinking about just throwing myself into a fandom of whatever team randomly pops up. And a few of them said, well, hopefully you get a team like the Diamondbacks or a team like the Seattle Mariners, because they're up and coming and they got a really exciting rotation, and they got a really exciting outfielder over there that I think you'd like. So I'm like, cool. And sure enough, they came up. And this was actually pretty easy for me to jump in, because as any 90s kid, I certainly had my Mariners phase. I can talk about those 90s Mariners teams as if they were my own, because when they popped up on ESPN Baseball or several video games, everyone knows coolest logo, coolest uniforms, coolest players to play for them. It was a very easy team to root for when you were a kid. So I'm liking the natural fit, not liking the 10:05, 10:30s, not necessarily digging that. I'm really enjoying this recent East Coast swing. That's allowed me to get a little bit more in depth, especially on getaway days when they're playing middle of the afternoon with none of the other teams going up against it. I feel like I've hijacked your show, and I'm sorry about that. I just get super excited when I talk about my lifelong.
Hey, this is for you to talk, not us. People can listen to us talk the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying it. And one thing that has actually proved to be true, and that people undersold, was someone told me that this was going to be a good rotation. They undersold it somehow. This might be, if they actually end up finishing this story, this could be an all-timer.
Yeah. Oh, I will say, though, to your point about not liking the 10:05 starts, so we can agree, the West Coast is the best time zone to watch sports.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you guys, no doubt. Frequenting the West Coast. I've only been to Seattle like twice, but it is a charmed existence out there. You guys haven't really labored through all that many 1:30 a.m. finishes. Your local time. It's, there are times that I'm sitting in my bed with my eyes being heavy, wondering why am I doing all of this? We don't necessarily talk Mariners baseball on my show. I'm just doing this as a bit to see if I can get back into the sport. And what I found out is the sport's fine. I've watched a couple of Dodgers games. How can you not be kind of sucked in by that incredible lineup? But more than anything, I like the Mariners broadcast. And I see things done on Mariners broadcasts that I don't necessarily see done on others. I don't know who the cinematographer is for these games, but that sweeping shot across a third base line that has become such a signature shot, I don't see that anywhere else. I'm not seeing that in national broadcast. The game, even if it's on mute, and trust me, I've had plenty of Mariners games on mute, it's aesthetically pleasing. There is a comfort that I didn't anticipate in seeing those Mariners uniforms that have gone relatively unchanged in terms of the traditional look since I started paying attention to them in the 90s. It's especially when you have the golden hour over at T-Mobile Park and the lighting hits just right. It's really pleasing to look at.
Yeah. So I believe they call it the fly cam, and you're right. They don't have it a ton of other places. I don't know why they don't, but I remember when they first unveiled it, I saw national people seeing those highlights on Twitter with that camera angle, and they were like, oh, this is awesome. They said this camera angle's sick.
Yeah, I'm still watching it in awe, wondering where has this been? Is this a new thing? Why isn't anyone else talking about this? And one thing that I'll say outside of the broadcasts and the uniforms that I find aesthetically pleasing is the Trident celebration is so rad. It's such a cool prop. And the guys on the team seem genuinely, I don't really know them from Adam, but they seem like easy dudes to root for. Mm-hmm. And it's not unlike those 90s teams, even though there were some jerks on that team, there were characters. And I don't know if it's something about Scott Service or maybe just the star players on this team that have an infectious personality, but this seems fun. It embraces a lot of the things that turned you on to the game that just remind you of, Corey League, having fun with your friends. These guys really seem to enjoy playing the game. It's an easy bunch to root for.
You mentioned to us before we hit record about, you're new into the Seattle Mariners world. How much have you tried? So you've tried to familiarize yourself with the current roster. How much else, like in past years, have you tried to go look at and dig up and learn a little bit more about the community you're jumping into?
Well, the community is a new exciting aspect of it, because when I was following Mariners baseball, and I did love Mariners baseball, like I said, you saw that backwards cap, you saw that swing. Everybody had him as their favorite baseball player, but also locally, Alex Rodriguez. Like, I was familiar with Alex. The local papers were following Alex Rodriguez throughout high school. He went to a high school called Westminster, which is a stone's throw away from my home. I got to know him a little bit when I was younger, and a little bit after he had left Seattle. It's random. He married my wife's cousin. But
wow.
Yeah. So, but this was after the Mariners stuff. But it's weird. But I've always kind of had this strange Mariners tether around. So I know a lot about those older teams. I was watching on TV when they went up against the Yankees and had that historic upset. I can randomly walk through a happy hour, walk up to one of my friends and just whisper in their ears, Jay Buhner, and get a reaction. Yeah. They had great characters. So, yeah, I know quite a bit, and I still surprise myself. Again, I guess for the purposes of this interview, the time that I stopped paying attention to baseball was really like the big lull for the Seattle Mariners in terms of being relevant all season long. So maybe I was a problem. Maybe me going away from the sport is what the Mariners were missing. And if we do end up finishing this ride with a world championship, do believe that I'm going to take all the credit for it.
I have two questions for you here. Number one, was that your little subtle way of saying my wife's cousin is J-Lo about A-Rod?
No, it's not J-Lo.
Okay.
My wife's name is Cynthia. You can piece that one together.
Okay. I figured that the answer was no to that. I just thought I'd still throw it in there. It's like, well, married A-Rod. It's like, well,
no,
possible.
She's Puerto Rican. I'm Cuban. No, but no, there's a Greek side of the family. That's a little odd. I don't like to really talk about it all that much. It is somewhat canon for our show, but it's just a means to say that I've had this weird connection. I played for the Mariners in Little League. Uh-huh. I played Ken Griffey Jr. baseball nonstop. I've always been. I listened to all the podcasts on the Prodigy podcast about Ken Griffey Jr. I just have an affinity for those '90s Mariners. So it's jumping back into it and seeing their name pop up first on that random team generator. I was like, yo, I can do this. I can heat this one up, no problem, because I kind of was a Mariners fan when I was a kid. So this is all good.
So that was my second question here for you. Is the way you became a new Mariner fan, so to speak, or I guess a Mariners fan again, is it just from the simulator paired with you used to like him in the 90s? I thought I heard something, you can tell me if this is wrong, about Mina Kimes trying to convince you if you're going to pick a team, pick the Mariners. Yeah,
she tried to recruit me. She did, because I think I ran it by her. Then I'm like, yeah, I want to get into baseball. I know the Mariners had their run last year. That was exciting. And she loves the Mariners. And she just told me, you should be a Mariners fan. You should be a Mariners fan. And I had two people say, like, the Mariners would be the team to go with. One of them was a passionate fan. The other one was a Red Sox fan. That, yeah, you'd be so lucky if it were the Mariners. And once Mariners came up, I was like, oh, this is great. I could talk with my friend Mina about Mariners baseball. She immediately threw me into a Mariners group chat that has a perfect amount of volume. It's not like some of my other psycho group chats. I like the psycho stuff too. I'm a bit of a sicko there. I'm one of the more active people in this Mariners group chat. But I love it because I think group chats are basically textbooks. It's a modern day textbook. I like to get in as many random group chats that are dedicated to a sole topic, because I feel like that's the true way I can follow them. Because if I'm traveling, there's been a couple of stretches this season where, look, there's just a week here where I can't watch. I just straight up can't watch. They're all 10:30 games. I'm going to have to be a box score fan this week. And the group chat keeps me updated on the daily goings on. So I there's really, as soon as I put on the internet that the Mariners came up there, I was really surprised by the amount of traffic that got inside of Mariners social media and all the accounts, you guys reaching out, and a bunch of people reaching out, asking me to be on podcasts. I'm like, what? Like, I haven't achieved anything yet. Guys, this is a bit. Like, to me, this is all kind of dumb. But then the more people took it seriously, it was like, well, I guess I really have to practice what I preach. I have to really get invested. And a funny thing happened. The team wasn't miserable. And it wasn't laborious to follow. I know we got off to an uneven start, but the division was weak. And it seems as though the Mariners have settled in to the point that I'm looking at these Yankees games and I'm seeing a possible ALCS preview here, boys.
What did you notice when you saw the factions of online Mariners fans coming into your replies and DMs? Well, like, was it the positive side? Was it the negative side? Because Lyle and I can peel back the onion and tell you all about what really is and isn't with online Mariners fans. I just want to get your first impression of the type of person you saw interacting with you.
Look, every franchise, even the most successful ones, have their tortured fan segments. Like, oh, you know sadness, but you don't know Oklahoma City Thunder sadness. Like, come on, guys, really? Like let's relax.
Want to talk Oklahoma City Thunder?
We can talk Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm sorry. I know that's a trigger. I wasn't planning. I was just picking a random team out there that didn't have much history. But every fan group thinks that their amount of torture is the worst. But no, you guys are really tortured. You guys are you have a pretty cool, I don't know if it's because of the Pacific Northwest and the days are so drab that you're conditioned to this life of misery, but you guys are generally upbeat about what's staring down at you like the barrel of a gun, and that yeah, the vibes are good right now, but you just watch. It's gonna end in misery. This team, they celebrate with an actual trident. There is no misery attached to this team. There is none. But I keep being warned that the shoe will drop and inevitably the misery will settle in, and that everything that I'm experiencing right now is actually just a setup for the misery. And I got to tell you, I'm around. I'm not feeling misery here. This is our year.
This is I was gonna say, this is a nice perspective for the two of us, especially for two people who truly live by it and die by it just about every day of our lives for I don't even know how many years, basically as long as I can remember.
Baseball. How do you do that with baseball? Like, there's games every day. You live and die with Mariners results. Like, I can understand, like, NFL, like, that's a 16th of our season that just went away. Like, come on.
Yeah.
We live in an area of the country until like 3 years ago didn't have a hockey team and hasn't had an NBA team in 15 years. Like, during the spring, summer, and early fall months, like, this is it. There's nothing. Since the NFL is such a humongous outlier of everything, like, that's almost a given at this point, where we need something a little bit more personal to attach to.
Yeah, I guess I should have considered that. That's a blind spot by me, but yeah, you didn't really have, up until recently, you didn't have many other games in town. I'm lumping in the Sounders in there because the Sounders have had a pretty charmed existence since getting to MLS. But that's why it seems a little disproportionate to me, I guess. It's because it's almost as if, like, you take the 25% allotted fan width that you now have for the Seattle Kraken, but it didn't exist for anybody. So you just had that all focus, that leftover bandwidth focus, hyper focus on the Mariners. So everything just felt a little bit more extreme. But yeah, the one thing that's really jumped out at me is how upbeat people are about the misery that is coming their way. It's like, it happens to us so often. It's kind of like the lovable losers thing, only you guys seem to just, again, it might be the Pacific Northwest hippie in you guys, but you guys are pretty chill about your lives being destroyed in a couple of months, which I'm enjoying.
We get used to it.
Yeah. I also want to ask too, because it's people who haven't had a basketball team in their hometown in 20 years now or close to it. You say, how do people live and die by baseball games every day with so many games? I've got a question to throw back at you as somebody who's a big basketball guy. How do you live and die by NBA games? Because isn't it, like, how I feel about it is regular season's predictable. You've now got maximum of 20 teams that can get into the playoffs every year. Like, is it like, I don't know. Do people live and die by NBA games in the regular season still? Because it feels like it would be hard to do that.
I don't. There are certain things. There is nothing in my sports fandom outside of maybe the University of Miami, yet I don't have, unfortunately, many connection points to them playing games of relevance.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of sports fandom and the height of vitriol, hate, and emotional investment, there was nothing quite in my life like the LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh Miami Heat.
Sure.
Everybody, even people probably in your listening audience, had a passionate opinion about that team. You woke up, you rolled out of bed, you went to the bathroom, you scrolled Twitter, you were in a fight for your lives because it wasn't just about basketball. It was about you not deserving this thing. It was about fans leaving games early and my fandom is better than your fandom. And it was just all insane. When you look back on it, there's a bit of a flash in the pan. But I can detail like regular season games against the Grizzlies that felt like the entire blueprint of that franchise was on the line. So that is always like my comparison point for it. Even now, when the Miami Heat, who've been to 2 NBA finals since LeBron left, one against LeBron, it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way. The only thing in my life that has matched that level of intensity is playoff hockey, as I'm wearing my Florida Panthers original 7 faux polo that, as you can tell by the inner lining, just totally took me for a ride. Don't order things on Instagram. Don't ever do that. Playoff hockey, and you guys got what a charmed existence your hockey team had, by the way. Just your second year of existing, you eliminate the reigning Stanley Cup champions because Val Nichushkin wants to party. But you realize in playing those games when you get to overtime and elimination games, as you guys played, the entire balance of your season, the hopes and dreams, the sacrifice, what those guys play through, the emotion of it all. It can end with a bounce of a puck that is on ice as guys are skating on swords. Like it is such an insane sport. It gives so much physically. You can't look at your phone during the game. It's another theory that I have, that the smartphone also really hurt baseball and that there's so much downtime in between. You kind of can disconnect from the actual experience. Whereas hockey, if you look down for a second, you might miss your team's season end or continue on. So playoff hockey, it's kind of like chasing the dragon, the first high of heroin. I've been chasing that LeBron James big 3 emotional investment, get me back to those highs. And right now, the closest thing that I have to it is hockey. But playoff baseball, as I remember from 2003 when I was a Marlins fan, that's got its own unique drama. And that's where the pauses and the natural breaks in the action actually lend itself to the drama. You can actually hear those whispers and those ghosts that you see torment you and become the little nagging thought that you have 2 outs into an inning, all of a sudden become obsessive, and it's all that you see. And I do like that about postseason baseball. I haven't had that feeling in over 20 years.
Yeah, it was the same thing for us, Mike Ryan. Like we Lyle and I's waking memory, we've seen 5 playoff games, 5 total. And I will say that at the small sample size we've had, equally as intense. Imagine sitting in a baseball stadium for 18 innings, seeing your team score no runs, while, the last call is in the 7th inning and you have to 11 more innings until the game's actually over, right? Just the feeling of that, I think, is really unmatched. And like you said, different from hockey. I do want to ask you, though, Mariners are in town in Miami as of recording this exactly a month from now. What's that feeling going to be like watching your new team against your old team in your home state?
I feel zero connection to the Miami Marlins. I struggle calling them the Miami Marlins from the uniforms. The only time I ever maybe had a little twinkle in my eye was last year. They did these throwback Fridays and I saw the old uniforms. I'm like, that's what I'm missing, a connection. It's been such a transient franchise. Anytime that you start loving a player, they get jettisoned off. There's no King Felixes in the history of this franchise. No one's allowed to play their entire career, even when they're not really mattering in terms of doing some real winning. they don't get to have these long runs in this franchise. The ownership's changed since then. They've had multiple fire sales and more broken promises. So when it comes to the Marlins, I actually like low key kind of root against them. Just not, and it's not an overt thing. It's all subconscious. Like I carry such resentment for what they forced upon my baseball fandom. They killed my passion for that sport. By moving into that building, I was one of those public voices using our show saying, we got to get them a ballpark. We got to save baseball in this market. I want to take my kids to this ballpark. I want to be able to develop a star and keep them. And before I could finish that sentence, they traded everybody, and I was taken for a ride. So I'm just happy I get to see the Mariners. In terms of connection to laundry, I got way more connection to the Mariners laundry than I do the Marlins. And no, it's not like I get to, I do like to troll Boston Celtics fans, so I'm not going to say I'm not a troll, because what I do is largely performative. But so what am I going to get at? Who am I going to tease at Marlins games? I might walk out of there with 3 foul balls that I'll just casually walk to.
Right. So are you going to any of these Mariners games when they're in town?
Yeah. Yes, I intend on doing that. Everything is everything is riding on what happens with the Florida Panthers. I may be on a bender because we've won the cup. I may be on a bender because we've lost the cup. But everything in my life is literally week to week dependent on what's going on with the Florida Panthers right now, including my baseball watching habits. Mm-hmm. I've actually enjoyed this longer break in between Panthers games because the Mariners are on the East Coast and they're playing a really good team in the New York Yankees. And I'm getting to watch them in ways and throw myself emotionally into them in ways that I haven't. But I will, in all likelihood, I'm trying to make it to all those games against the Marlins to really further ingratiate myself. Because I imagine there's going to be some, I do know in town, there are a couple of Mariners fans. A lot of people are kind of like me. They have this national recognition because of everything that I articulated earlier, the 90s, junior.
So I know Florida gets a rap for not being great baseball fans, but it seems like, talking to you about this and knowing some other people from Florida, it's more the fault of the Marlins themselves that the baseball culture is this way, opposed to just like there's just better things to do in Miami.
Yeah, I mean there is an element of that. There are better things to do in Miami. Again, like while I'm into this Mariners season, hey, I have to really force the issue sometimes. Baseball can be a plodding game, but I like college baseball. I go to a ton of Miami Hurricanes baseball games. I think you're letting Major League Baseball off easy when you put all of this on the Marlins. Mm-hmm. They knew that they had a new ownership group coming in that was going to spend well above what they could actually afford. And as soon as they got ownership of the team, they started jettisoning huge star players because they realized we're actually a much smaller operation than what we paid for. So Major League Baseball didn't care about that. Major League Baseball didn't care about what they planned to do with the franchise after they bought it. They were all about establishing a new high watermark for a franchise, just so the next one that goes for another amount of money that tops that one. So I think Major League Baseball is actually really to blame here for what's happened. Yes, Miami's had mismanagement from Jeffrey Loria on down to where we're at. Loads of betrayals. I'm not going to let them completely off the hook, but I'm not going to ignore Major League Baseball's culpability here. And it's a shame because you guys have watched the World Baseball Classic. Those crowds, they exist. They're all here. We're not bussing them in. Like these are people that have a passion for baseball and they have a connection to their country. They don't have a connection to the players. You can talk about roster construction or what have you, but I know there are baseball fans here. I know this to be a really good baseball market. I know people are passionate about the game, but I know a lot of people feel betrayed by the franchise like I've been.
So it sounds like I was wondering when in time the Marlins lost you. It sounds like I was wondering when you said all the trades, if it was during the Jeter era when they traded Yelich, they traded Stan. It sounds like it was way before that, around
there was a Josh Johnson trade, and it was actually randomly. It was a trade that they won with Toronto. They traded Burley, they traded Jose Reyes, they traded Josh Johnson, and they got back some guys that actually did bolster their minor league roster. And like I said, if you look back on it, they probably won that trade, but I thought it was such a shit message to send to everybody. They just jettisoned a bunch of star players. They made a big splash at the winter meetings, and you actually bought it hook, line, and sinker. Like, oh, we got them in the stadium. They said that we couldn't actually compete and get these marquee players here because they didn't have their own stadium. So we got taxpayers to pay for their stadium. They got one for free. Now we finally arrived, boys. We can be one of the marquee franchises. And like I said, before you can finish that sentence, everybody was gone. And you had a bunch of names that you didn't recognize playing for your team in a uniform that was garish. Also, I don't like the park. Oh, I don't like the park. It doesn't have character. I've been when it was Safeco, and I like that park. It was a good park.
It's nice. It's gotten better.
We love it.
Quality sports district, really.
Yeah.
Like,
here's a fun question. Here's a fun question for you. Of the games you have watched so far this year, not named Julio Rodriguez, is there a guy that you've loved watching on this
dumper?
team?
Big dumper.
Love it.
Big dumper. Yeah, Cal's on my fantasy team. I drafted Cal, and I think that, one thing that maybe gets talked about, but again, I the only connection that I have with the fan base is what I see on social media and my Mariners group chat. I don't hear people in casual conversation talk about his ability to manage his staff. But I don't think you can talk about the success that the pitching rotation's had without him. And, he's a big guy. He'll occasionally hit a bomb. His nickname is Big Dumper. It's not one of the first things that you want to talk about. It's not super sexy, but I think he's done a masterful job with this staff. And it's not the easiest staff to manage because there's a lot of arms here that you're trying to protect. I know that they've been careful with Kirby. He's also my fantasy team. But Big Dumper, how can you not just totally fall in love with a dude by the name of Big Dumper? And he happens to be having like a nice little season. He's stepping up in big moments. So I really like him. But for me, outside of J-Rod and Big Dumper, it's mostly about this rotation. And I didn't think pitching would be all that interesting to me. I know that there have been some good staffs in Mariners past, but when I became a Mariners fan, I was just thinking, offense. And that hasn't really come to fruition, although I hope that we can add a couple of bats here at the deadline. It sounds like Toronto realizes they've maximized what they could do with that roster. There's a couple of names on that roster that I think would fit quite nicely in with Seattle, because I do think that Seattle is like not just a bat away, like certainly a big bat away, but they could also use a little bit more depth in positions. 2 more bats. When you couple that with this bullpen and this rotation, you can legitimately talk World Series with the Seattle Mariners. It's got to be super exciting for you guys.
Yeah. I got to tell you, you don't sound like a new fan with these takes about Cal managing the pitching staff, the rotation being good. You talking about them needing to add a big bat at the deadline. Like these are all the talking points that Mariners people are bringing up on a daily basis. So you're either really tuned in, or you're just,
or I know how to fake it really well. I think
you're a ball knower.
Yeah, well, no, it's a combination of knowing how to fake it, being on like sports radio for 20 years. But no, I've watched these things pop off the screen a little bit. Trust me, there was a pretty laborious stretch of offense that was like, what did I get myself into earlier on in the season? Where I'm like, can we get like Tatis? He looks fun. Let's get what is I kept Googling what Trout's situation was. Would he accept a trade to a division rival? Like they needed something, and J-Rod also like struggled out the gates too. And like the main selling point that everybody told me is like, oh, this guy plays the game so fantastic. And I've seen it in glimpses, and I think he's coming online more and more. I think we can all agree he hasn't necessarily hit his stride. I'm like waiting for like his style of play that was sold to me as like this really infectious style of play to sink its hooks into me and drag me in. I see it there. I see the seeds there. But I want a few more tridents too. The trident's just so damn cool. So I need more people to hit the ball out of the park so I can see the trident a little bit more.
Sure.
This is like a really fun baseball conversation. I love the ideas that are getting thrown out here and just all of this. And I'll tie this back to what you do on a day-to-day basis, Mike Ryan, because you're now the executive producer of Meadowlark Media, and you worked on the Le Batard Show, still appear on there. You're on there this morning for a long time. And you said you guys don't like talk about baseball all that much on that show and overall in that company, it sounds like. Does baseball have a future there for like the vision you guys see in the future of trying to push baseball more to the forefront? Because as we see it as Mariners fans doing this podcast, we feel like it's part of our job to usher in a new era of baseball fans that we felt might have been left behind with the Mariners being so bad for so long. Do you see that as a potential thing for your future at your company?
You mean in terms of like scouting media, as a media company, scouting like potential properties? We've tried a couple of different stabs in baseball. Baseball's a curious thing. While there's some encouraging numbers, it would support like, no, the arrow's actually pointing up here. There's also some concerning metrics, and this isn't necessarily like, it's great to see your youthful enthusiasm, and the fact that you guys have only seen 5 playoff games is equal parts adorable but also sad. You guys are an outlier. You see the guys talking about that sport and their legacy names, and the median age in this sport is a lot closer to golf than it is to like pro basketball. But it's all about peaks and valleys. Yeah. Right now, hockey's having its highest rated postseason, I think, maybe ever. And you're starting to see an infusion of younger personalities and national personalities bring attention to this. I think Pat McAfee's done a brilliant job of putting a spotlight on the NHL, and the personalities have changed. And you've seen this be like, what gets the sport to grow are personalities that can make you feel like, oh, this is where the cool crowd's hanging out. I'm missing something. I'm missing out on my sports fandom experience by not following this. And the Trident goes a really long way in making something seem fun. So what I'm saying, Mariners, really play up the Trident. Ball needs to go far so Trident comes out. But in terms of like the responsibility to gatekeep and keep a sport alive, that's number one. That's pretty heavy. I'm not that important. But I don't want to ignore the sport entirely. But you look at just the sports landscape as someone that's championing sports, like been a huge soccer fan most of my adult life, someone that's just pounding the table for hockey presently, for women's sports, women's college basketball, for non-revenue sports. The plight of baseball has kind of found itself in that niche where there are really 2 major sports in this country. It's pro football and it's college football. And then like NBA basketball, in terms of like what people devote their daytime content to, is like 3rd, but there's a wide drop off after that. And everybody's fighting now. And it's really strange to me that the national pastime, it's found itself in this conversation. Because when I was growing up watching, the classic Sports Center anchors, it was all baseball highlights. They would carry me through my summer vacation. I'd go to bed listening to Vince Scully, and it felt like the national pastime stuff was legit. And I really want to blame Apple for the iPhone for making this happen, because in terms of just being front of mind, being part of the national sports discourse, it's not there in ways that it used to be. It's more of a niche thing. I'm a big Jack White guy, though, and Jack White is really trying to keep this sport alive by really amplifying all the boring aspects of it. Like I said, I get it, timeless game and all that. We need more Tridents.
Okay.
Yeah.
More Tridents. Have we thought about a second Trident?
Where would you put it?
Yeah.
I would also have it in the dugout. Like, you get as many Tridents for how many runs you've batted in. Solo shot, you get 1 Trident.
Okay.
You have a runner on second, you get 2 Tridents.
Okay.
Grand salami, someone has to find a way to carry all 4 Tridents.
Or here's an idea too, because the pitchers don't get any love with the Tridents. It's all for hitters with home runs. How do we get the pitchers holding up the Tridents after striking out the side or something like that, especially with this rotation?
Like those like yellow raincoats that sailors wear? Like, you remember the old Islanders, like 90s hockey logo? Maybe we can, there's an ice pack attached to that, and we could put that on the pitcher anytime he goes in the dugout in between innings. As the boys are batting out there, we can throw in like an old Mariners coat over them. I like the props. The props are fun. Look, okay. I haven't had many reasons to celebrate the University of Miami over the last 20 years when it comes to football. That turnover chain was something, wasn't it?
Sick.
Oh, yeah.
It was sick.
Turnover chain. Trident probably doesn't exist without the turnover chain. So right. I'm all for the props. More props.
Right.
Is that how you grow baseball? I know this is a loaded question, but if it was up to you on how to keep growing the sport and getting it back to more relevance in your terms, I guess. Is it things like that, or are there other things you'd implement in too?
I think that there are real legitimate problems with how ESPN covers sports. And the ESPN model right now, if you watch their daytime programming grid, it is all just propaganda to get you to watch the games they have rights to. They do an expert job of this with the NFL. It's why you turn on First Take, and no matter what, no matter where we are in the calendar, they're talking about Dak Prescott because they have the metrics to back this up. They're pretty decent when it comes to getting you to watch, like as we saw with the Caitlin Clark 18 million person rating. They devoted an entire day block to getting people to watch this game. They got that, and you saw the results of it. They know how to work that machine. Game Day is another good example. They've let a lot of good people go when it comes to baseball. And the people there right now don't really know what they're doing or how to sell this game. And that's a huge problem. And you're seeing an uptick in the NHL. And it's not because some suit in the back came up with a brilliant idea. No, it's just because Pat McAfee likes a sport and decided to force the issue because it's something that he naturally likes, and he made it seem cool. And you're starting to see that tree bear fruit.
Sure.
MLB Network does a great job. My friend Ed Enberg just won an Emmy for Best Studio Show. But that's not how you get the casual sports fans. Casual sports fan is not going to stop on MLB Network because MLB is in the name. You're going to need to get them on some of these tentpole shows. And right now, either the talent is limited, and I think the world of Stephen A. Smith, great on basketball, knows how to talk pro football, he can make politics interesting to me. Baseball is a struggle. He's not, and so the talent needs to change a little bit. The ideas need to change a little bit. And right now, the biggest talents in sports, they're playing the game. The metrics are saying we shouldn't really pay that much attention to baseball because there isn't this appetite. Moreover, we don't personally like baseball all that much. And I think that genuine people feed off of genuine excitement, I think. Right. And that genuine excitement is too far in right now in between genuine excitement and meaningful games. Like the regular season right now, you can't get them to talk about baseball during the NBA playoffs. Mm-hmm. You can't. It's not mentioned. It's a sport that used to be synonymous with summer, and all the main talent goes on vacation when the sport starts finding its groove. It's in a really tricky spot, and I think we've proven in sports media, my company included, it's really difficult to make that work right now in this new media age. The game changed a little bit, and we haven't really altered how we talk about this timeless game as times change.
I want to go to a point you made earlier before we wrap this up, Mike Ryan, because you were talking about the WBC crowds. Like we need more of those games. We need I think the cultural crossover is really important when it comes to these games, because I think people would be more inclined to watch.
They've tried. They said, hey, you can bring your drums to the games, and we want to replicate this atmosphere. You know what happens? No one
brings the drums.
No one brings a drum. Like you might have one sad drummer. Like they've butchered it. And my first internship out of high school was with the Florida Panthers, and I worked there, and it was a dire situation. They were giving all their tickets away, free parking. They were giving sponsorships away. It was tough. I thought the franchise was going to move several times over. There were 2 lockouts that killed any momentum. And on top of that, they were not good. They were perpetually 5 points out of the final playoff spot. It took leadership, stability, forward thinking, a good draft strategy, and it really legitimately took 10 years to get to this point. Guys like Barkov and Ekblad, they're not even 30. And they've been on this team for 10 years. They're still like relatively young players, yet they've been in this market forever. It took a long time to turn this cruise ship around. And I think baseball is in a similar place. And I do think guys like J-Rod that shit works. Like the pimping out a trot, like that stuff pops a little bit. Good, infectious personalities that make this seem like a destination where you can have fun. Boys of Summer. This is supposed to be a fun game. I hope that can grab some fans, but I do really struggle with how this sport really takes a hold of that younger audience, given that the game itself is so tough for the casual sports fan that is in their early 20s to wrap their head around.
Sure.
It does not play well to the ADD crowd.
Mm-hmm.
We'll wrap with this. I wanted to get at least a ranking out of you as a newly minted member of the Mariners community. I want you to rank your top 3 Mariners ever.
Ever?
Yes.
All right. So let's just go. Junior Griffey, number 1. A-Rod, number 2. I know that that's loaded for a lot of fans out there, but I think that might not be popular in our comment section. Yeah, I think I laid out the reasons why. Just chalk it up to like a Miami thing. I'm gonna go Randy Johnson, number 3, the big unit, the mullet, the mustache, the intimidating presence. Can you imagine like being an 8-year-old boy watching that guy on the mound? That dude is terrifying.
Uh-huh.
You know when like you were growing up and you'd visit your friend and you'd never see his dad, but on occasion you would, and you'd be terrified of him?
Mm-hmm.
That was the energy that Randy Johnson brought to a TV screen all the time. He's just terrifying. So,
Right.
I mean, he killed a bird with a baseball.
Yeah.
Like he was such a great character. So that's pretty easy for me. And now, like more modern day, I'm a big dumper guy.
Okay. Love it.
I think I'm
Well,
going to get
that's
a custom jersey. They sell those custom jerseys that just say big dumper on them, right?
Oh, yeah. You can get one.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I
So-
think I'll rock a big dumper jersey.
Yeah, you should get a City Connect. The City Connect jerseys are awesome. I have one.
I never thought that I would like black uniform pants.
Yeah.
I dig it.
It works. It's
a
works.
great look.
Yeah.
I don't like the Fanatics uniforms. I don't like the small print.
No.
I know some teams are getting the larger print back. It really, really hurts watching that beautiful Mariners uniform have such small letters
I know.
on the back of the nameplate. We got to do something about this.
Well, Mike Ryan, this has been awesome. Officially welcome to the Mariners community. It's been a pleasure having you here on this podcast. And again, a month from now, I hope you have fun with the Mariners and the Marlins. That should be a really fun series, and I hope you enjoy it.
I don't know if you guys make it out to road trips to see your M's. Let me be the first to tell you, don't come to Miami. It's a miserable ballpark. I'll be there, and if you want to hang out and drink beer and hear an echoey conversation because of how cavernous the building is, I mean, I'd advise against it. There are probably better places to be out there. But if you're a sicko and you want to experience really like the lowest rung of the professional baseball ladder, I'll be there.
Still need to experience that ballpark. Got to check it off the list, but we'll take that into consideration. Thanks, Mike Ryan.
You're not missing much, except like maybe a couple of roosters. The roosters are actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, thanks, Mike Ryan. This has been awesome.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care. Have a good one. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Really hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Mike Ryan Ruiz. We had a blast talking to him. He was awesome. I hope we have him back on again. If the Mariners win the World Series at some point, we'll have to call him back up, see where he's at, see where his fandom's at, and tell him, hey, it was all worth it. So really glad we got to have him on. Hopefully you guys got to learn a little bit more about him, and hopefully there's somebody out there who maybe wasn't a Mariners fan before and listening to this conversation gave him a reason to be. So with that, that'll wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download, leave us a 5-star review, leave a written review. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe, and then check us out on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.